That wish you never made by Po_Tato2. Chapter 4. Caged a bird bruised black and blue. It takes 2 hours for Izuku to appear at Eraserhead and Present Mic's front door, with a blank face and annoyed eyes. "Hope you like cats," is the only thing Aizawa says to him, although Izuku can tell he has far more he wants to say. "Course," Izuku responds. Eraserhead gestures Izuku inside, and as soon as Izuku's through the door, 3 cats swarm his feet, chirping and making various noises. A 4th one stands at the far end of the genkin, fur raised as it hisses. These 3 are Sake, Mochi, and Noodle, and that one is Bastard. Eraserhead nods at the various cats, and Izuku huffs a breath out of his nose, tempted to crack a smile. He briefly pets the cats while he takes off his shoes, but he's still quick to focus back on Eraser. "Come on, I'll show you where your room is." Eraser waves his hand in a vague gesture that Izuku gathers is supposed to mean, "Follow me." He does, past a decently clean living room and down a hallway, straight into a bedroom that was clearly a guest room. Eraserhead flicks on the lights, and Izuku grimaces at the clean bedspread because he hasn't showered in several days, and there are bits and pieces of dirt and grossness that sometimes flake off of him. "I figure you might want to take a shower," Eraser says, and Izuku is relieved, although a part of him is pretty sure Eraser was quick to offer because Izuku was likely to bring fleas to his cap. Izuku drops his bag on the floor in the corner of the room as Eraser disappears from behind him. Shrugging, Izuku tentatively pushes open the door in the hallway near his room. Bingo. Footsteps sound behind him. "Here, kid." Eraser is holding out a small pile of clothes. "We'll take you to get some actual clothes tomorrow, after school, but for tonight you'll just have to use some of my old ones." Instinctively, Izuku opens his mouth to argue. He doesn't need help. He can take care of himself. Eraser evidently anticipates that, however, because he doesn't even give Izuku a chance to protest. "It wouldn't make any sense to put back the same clothes right after you get clean. I'll wash them and you can wear them tomorrow." Eraser meets Izuku's narrowed eyes with a calm, unwavering gaze. And Izuku can't come up with an argument to that, so he takes the clothes, then shuts himself into the bathroom, ignoring Eraser's offer of showing him the shower controls. It can't be that difficult, and even if it is, he'll figure it out on his own. Taking the shower is, Izuku privately admits in the safety of his own mind, in the top 3 best things that's happened to him since he's left home. He hadn't realised just how dirty he was until he got clean, and he cringed when it took 2 washes to completely clean his hair. Ugh. A small part of Izuku is loath to get out of the shower, but he doesn't know how much hot water the apartment has, and the last thing he wants to do is pointlessly waste it just because he wants to stand in it. He gets out of the shower, wincing at the wet footprints he leaves as he walks to the towel rack. Drying off, Izuku sees a bottle of lotion that's sitting on the counter, and he cannot help but think of Tomura. Closing his eyes, Izuku tilts his head, and when he opens them, he is staring at himself in the mirror. Has he always looked so tired? His hair is still wet, and he likes it better this way, because then the pure snow white of his hair is darkened to a colour that is closer to Tomura's than his father's. Not that he's ever vocalized that thought, obviously. Sentimentality already had no place in their household, much less ridiculous thoughts like that. Shaking his head, Izuku dispels those thoughts from his head. Grabbing the clothes Eraser gave him, he's quick to get dressed, although everything is big on him. The end product, Izuku finds, is that he looks not unlike an elementary kid playing dress-up in their parents' clothes. His eye twitches minutely, momentarily. This whole situation fucking sucks. Living with 2 pro heroes, who are also his teachers, means Izuku will never have a single moment to completely let down his barriers. A single moment to himself. But he will admit that Mike and Eraser are far from the worst living options he could have been stuck with. On that note, though, he would also be the first to point out to Nezu that he is more than capable of simply leaving if he's put with someone he doesn't want to live with. At least they have a cat. A voice, not unlike Tomura's whispers. "But they want to take me shopping. For clothes," Izuku argues back. "Well, it's not like you don't need them," Tomura says snidely. Izuku is more than aware that arguing with himself in his own mind, and personifying one of the side of the arguments to beat Homura is unhealthy at best and mentally unhinged at worst, but that doesn't stop him from doing it. That isn't the point. I don't want to own them any more than I already do. You're the one who's supposed to believe in heroes, remember? But Tomura doesn't sound sure. I have always agreed that heroes cannot be trusted. Then why are you there right now? Why run to them? Why aren't I good enough to make you stay? How could you leave me? How could you leave me, Izuku? Blinking hard, Izuku swallows and shuts down his pointless arguing with himself. As usual, it has only devolved into his own accusations against himself, and dwelling on those will help nobody, least of all Tomura. There's no telling how long he's just been standing in the bathroom, staring at the mirror, but after the day he's had, Izuku feels that he's quite frankly entitled to it. Exiting the bathroom, he holds his ragged set of clothes out in his hands as he glances around. Here, put them in the washer. Footsteps sound from behind him, and Izuku narrowly avoids jumping. Eraser walks down the hallways and pulls open a sliding wooden screen, revealing a washer and a dryer behind it. Izuku follows, then drops his clothes into the open washer as instructed. Awkwardly, he waits and waits as Eraser fiddles with the dials before filling it with soap and turning it on. You can do whatever, kid. Feel free to watch the TV or use the table for homework. Eraserhead says when he turns back around and sees Izuku still in the hallway. Izuku can't remember the last time he spent time just watching the TV. The closest he ever got was watching Tomura play video games, but that was far more about Tomura than it was the games. Homework, though, that was something he could do. Shuffling into what has been dubbed as his bedroom, Izuku digs through his backpack, wrinkling his nose at touching it now that he's actually clean. He abandons it in his room, bringing his work to the kitchen table as Eraserhead had suggested. Izuku isn't yet sure if Eraser and Mike are the type where suggestions are really orders, so it's best to play it safe until he knows. As the evening wears on, Mike starts cooking at one point, bringing with him noise and energy. The cats follow him in, as well, something that secretly makes Izuku smile, especially seeing as one of them is spectacularly fat. Izuku watches the easy way Eraser and Mike react, how they mold into each other's spaces like it's second nature. The casual touches, a hand on a shoulder, a foot tapping against an ankle. The simple endearment that seems to come to them for actions that Izuku instinctively tenses his muscles at. When Mike is trying to tell Izuku a story about something or other, waving his arms around widely while he does so, he ends up smacking Eraser in the side of his head as the man tries to scoot by him. And Izuku doesn't move, doesn't flinch, because he knows better, but his muscles tense and he is ready for a fight, ready to run, because Eraser was hit, and surely there will be retribution for such an act. But Eraser just sighs, rolling his eyes as Mike apologizes sheepishly, glancing at Izuku and telling him this happens all the time. Then Eraser walks on, and Izuku watches incredulously as he goes. It's so painfully obvious that he does not belong here. Izuku is the first to the classroom for their second day of class, although Ida arrived shortly after him. If Izuku didn't have such a tight hold over his reactions, he would have laughed with blatant surprise on Ida's face when he saw he wasn't the first to arrive. Good morning, Shigaraki-kun, Ida says, although it isn't announced with the usual robustness that Izuku can already tell is delivered with almost all of Ida's statements. He nods at Ida a single time, then buries his head back in a book he'd stolen from Eraser and Mike's bookshelf. Fortunately, all the classmates who continue to arrive seem to get the hint and don't try to interact with him. Small mercies. The late bell rings and the class falls silent as Eraser bangs open the door on cue. He surveys the class slowly, and the tension rises almost palpably. Better than yesterday, Eraser finally announces, and it's almost funny the way everyone seems to take a deep breath. Today, you have a task ahead of you. Eraser draws, darting his eyes from student to student. Choose a class president and vice president. With these succinct instructions, Eraserhead zips himself into his sleeping bag and closes his eyes. So mundane, Izuku thinks to himself. Immediately, every voice in the class begins to speak, and Izuku honestly wishes he had a sleeping bag of his own. He turns back to his book, and it isn't until the classroom quiets that Izuku tunes in once more, just in time to catch the end of what was probably a long-winded explanation. "And I will collect your votes," Ida yells. Ah, they're voting. Izuku digs in his backpack to find a piece of paper, and is quick to scribble Yayorozu. When he holds out the paper with a bored face, Ida takes it from him without hesitating, which is something, at least, but he does move like he's doing with the delicacy of a bomb. Behind him, he can hear someone whisper, "Who'd you vote for?" Izuku returns to his journal, ignoring the whisper, because there's almost no reason they'd be talking to him. After a moment, a pencil pokes him in the back, gently, and when Izuku snaps his head around, eyes narrowed, all he sees is the purple kid with the brainwashing quirk staring at him impassively. "Who'd you vote for?" he repeats slowly, and Izuku can't help but be slightly impressed by his audacity. The intent quirk is what Izuku looks at first, but all it tells him is curiosity, resolve, striving, which is oddly unhelpful. "Yayorozu," he says slowly, like it could be a trap. "That's the girl with the ponytail, right?" the boy mutters, and when Izuku nods, the boy makes an approving face, glancing around the classroom as Ida finishes collecting the paper scraps. "I voted for Suyu-kun," the kid says, and it takes Izuku a moment to remember that that's the girl with the frog mutation. Izuku nods distractedly. She's definitely one of the better choices among their classmates. After a moment that is far too long for Izuku's comfort, he turns back around slowly, and although he's too well trained to allow his face to reflect it, he's slightly confused. How odd. That Friday, as they leave the apartment, Aizawa tells him that his class is going on a field trip of sorts that day. Izuku isn't exactly thrilled by the news, but he at the very least appreciates Eraserhead warning him, even though he won't give him any additional information. "The main reason I'm telling you," Eraser says, and Izuku can feel worry, trepidation, resignation, fear, "is because All Might, as well as 13, are going to be with our class." Fan-fucking-tastic, Izuku thinks, and then, to make sure there's no confusion on the subject, "Fan-fucking-tastic," he tells Eraserhead. Although Eraserhead sighs, there is no sign of anger, annoyance, rage. He just keeps walking without responding, all the way to the classroom door where he, for once, actually goes inside before the bell rings. As soon as the bell rings, the class falls silent, and Eraser wastes no time. "Change into your hero costumes. We're taking a bit of a field trip today." The brief uproar that arises at his words is quickly silenced when he flashes his quirk. Izuku wants to roll his eyes, even as he stands to go grab his costume case. With the way they act, you wouldn't think these kids were 15 and 16, but rather 11 and 12. All Might is nowhere to be found, not that Izuku is complaining. Regardless, they all change, then head down to the front of the building where a small bus is waiting for them. UA even has its own fucking buses? Seriously? Izuku completely ignores Ida's attempts to shepherd everyone on the bus by seat number, and brushes past the boy entirely, earning himself a shouted reprimand that he also ignores. His classmates settle on the bus, but not without a racket as they do so. Shinso slides into the seat beside him, probably because he's the only one brave enough to do so. Izuku's idly checking his phone, and wishing he had thought to bring his book when someone says his name. "Shigaraki-kun, I'd like to say what's on my mind, and you seem to hate the rest of us, kiddo." Tsuyu, mutation, frog, partial and internal and external, says, looking at Izuku like he isn't actively glowering at her. It's silent, and Izuku realizes everyone is looking at him, waiting for him to respond. It almost makes him laugh. "Well, if you're waiting for me to disagree, sorry, but it's not happening." Harsh. The guy with the bulky elbows, mutation, admitter, tape dispenser, elbow adherent, says, "We're trained to be heroes. Hitting your teammates in the middle of battle is probably going to be counterproductive." Shinso surprisingly pipes up from where Izuku thought he'd been napping. Izuku tilts his head towards Shinso as a form of acknowledgement. "Valid, but I don't have to like any of you to trust you. If we're fighting a villain or whatever, I'll work with you guys, and whoever my teammate was to the best of my ability, and I certainly wouldn't leave you wounded or injured." Rolling his eyes as Izuku sees several people actually slumped in relief, Izuku adds on, "I just don't want to talk to you recreationally." "Why not, kiddo?" Suyu asks. Izuku gives her an appraising look, one that he then turns to all of his classmates that he can see. because the luxury of naivety most of you have is something I simply can't stomach being around in casual conversation. Everyone on the bus looks at Izuku with a look of fear, confusion, offense, or an interesting mix of the three. Izuku continues. Plus, I'm of the opinion that I would genuinely corrupt your good natures and happy dispositions. What the fuck? The electricity boy whispers, not quite low enough to be unheard. That marks the end of Izuku's contribution to the conversation, and he stays silent for the rest of the short bus ride across campus. The space hero, 13, is waiting for them when they get off the bus and inside the USJ, which Izuku privately admits is impressive. 13 talks to his class about how quirks can be dangerous, how quirks can kill, and Izuku mentally chuckles. That is not a lesson he needs to be taught. In fact, that is a lesson he knows better than the veins on the back of his hand. A flicker catches Izuku's eye, and he immediately snaps his head to look at it. Aizawa catches his movement, and he turns his head to look where Izuku had turned his head. Voices start to murmur, then rise, but Izuku ignores them as he watches a familiar portal grow wide in the plaza of the USJ. Seriously? As Izuku watches his brother and Nani survey the USJ, he sighs. Long and slow, a headache starting to form. This is going to be embarrassing, he can already tell. Aizawa looks at him, and the second he clocks the long-suffering expression on Izuku's face, his own tense expression changes into one of vague exasperation. You have to be joking, he says dryly. I'm just as upset as you are, Izuku reassures him, although neither of them show any outward signs of distress. The huge, growing group of villains makes Aizawa tense, though, and Izuku clocks the moment he shifts from Aizawa to Eraserhead. No one down there will hesitate to attack anyone here, Izuku says, just in case Eraserhead happened to have any delusions about how this is going to work. Red eyes start to him briefly before Eraser slides on his goggles and readies his capture weapon. 13, Eraser calls. Protect the students. Izuku hears someone asking something about whether this is part of the exercise, and he resists the urge to turn around and call them a variety of creative names. Instead, when Eraser leaps off the top of the stairs, Izuku takes off running in the same direction, ignoring the calls of his name coming from his classmates. His target is waiting for him, pale red eyes unblinking and unmoving as they watch him. Izuku aches because he has missed seeing them. Little brother, Tomura greets him, arms spread out wide, and Izuku can tell there's a smile underneath the embalmed hand on his face. It's more endearing than he will ever admit. Shigaraki Izuku. Kurogiri bows, and never mind, Izuku kind of wants to kill himself now. This is going to cause so many problems. What are you doing here? Izuku massages his forehead. Maybe I missed you, Tomura grumbles, dropping his pose, and Izuku sighs, shoulders slumping. It isn't the same without you around. So you decide to invade my school and attack my classmates. Izuku raises an eyebrow, but his anger is already slipping away. I gave no kill orders. Tomura waves his hand dismissively. And the Nomu? Izuku glares at the hulking creature standing behind Tomura, not that it was hard to miss. Tomura shrugs, unconcerned. No, that's to kill All Might. To kill All Might? Izuku repeats incredulously. He's surprised when Tomura gives him a look like he's stupid, as he's used to giving that look to others. You know that sensei wouldn't have wanted me to come if I didn't have an objective to complete. The slip-up doesn't go unnoticed by Izuku, and it serves as a burning reminder as to why he's fighting. To save Tomura. I wish you would just come with me, Tomu-chan, Izuku says, because he has to try at least once. You'd be safe here, let me save you. Tomura huffs a breath that could be a sigh or a laugh. That's not one of the choices here, Izuku. My character wasn't made to be saved. Not expecting anything else, Izuku may not be surprised, but he is disappointed. But then again, he'd been disappointed a lot recently. One day I will rewrite the code for the game. Tomura dips his head a little, and Izuku can't see what expression he's making. But it doesn't really matter anyway, because they both know there's only one thing left for them to do in this situation. Well, Tomu-chan, Izuku says, and a grin almost teasing grows on his face as he shifts into a fighting stance. I hope you won't hold it against me when I win. Oh, Izu. Tomura sighs, lowering himself in a crouch, slipping his father's hand into his pocket so he can make full eye contact with Izuku. Izuku didn't know any better, he'd almost think Tomura looks sad. I could never hold anything against you, not even leaving me. And for just a moment, Izuku's expression shatters like ice, and he looks stricken, heartbroken at Tomura's words. From afar, Aizawa watches the entire interaction as he takes out small-time thugs, and as he does, he thinks he's trying to put together the puzzle that makes up his twisted and broken student. Izuku opens his mouth, but he never gets a chance to say what, he doesn't even know, as Tomura lunges at him, fondness in his eyes and palms splayed out wide. In the time it takes to think, Izuku has jerked to the side, swiftly pulling out matching knives from hidden areas in his suit. Tomura and Izuku have always been forced to play for full stakes, every time, and this is no different. And later, those of his classmates who witnessed any pieces of the fight will only have one thing to say about it. And it was that their classmate was fighting against the leader of the villains with everything in him, and that Shigaraki Izuku was the only one who had been a match for the leader until All Might arrived. Todoroki Shoto stared impassively at the detective. Shigaraki looked like he had every intention to kill the man with the hands on him. But I did notice something. What's that? Tsukauchi prompts. The man made of mist. He called the main villain Shigaraki Tomura, and he made no move to hurt or even touch Shigaraki, the one from my class. Tsukauchi keeps his face blank, resisting the urge to sigh. Thank you, Todoroki-kun. That's very helpful information. Todoroki shallowly bows his head before getting up and leaving the room. When I brainwashed the villains and asked them questions, they told me something weird. Shinso Itoshi's eyes darted across the room, occasionally landing back on the detective. What did they tell you, Shinso-kun? Tsukauchi asks, glancing at the tape recorder sitting on the table between them. They said that they were under orders not to kill any of us. Shinso looks vaguely unnerved. No fatal injuries, or else they... Shinso licks his lips nervously, eyes darting to Tsukauchi, then away again. Or they'd be killed themselves. This is all very helpful. Thank you, Shinso-kun. Tsukauchi scribbles something on the notepad in front of him. Izuku sits once again in Nezu's office, this time with a mandatory set of quirks pressing cuffs on him at All Might's insistence. Nezu himself is of course there, as is All Might, Recovery Girl, 13, Eraserhead and Present Mic. They're mainly waiting on Tsukauchi, Izuku knows, but All Might seems all too happy to take full reign as the time ticks by. This is exactly what I feared, All Might roared, steam rising off his buffed-up form. Izuku has to actively work, not to roll his eyes. You led them right to us. What do you mean, led? Izuku says, raising an eyebrow, all snark despite the situation. Literally the entire country knows you're teaching here. He didn't deny it, All Might yells, way too loudly, pointing a dramatic finger at Izuku and completely ignoring Izuku's point. For fuck's sake, would you sit down? Eraserhead snaps, jerking All Might into his seat right as he deflates, coughing up blood. You're already far past your limit. What on earth do you think you're doing? Recovery Girl scolds, scuttling to All Might's side, lighting fast. The boy, All Might doesn't get much further before coughing up blood again. I already know, Izuku groans, sinking as low in his chair as he can go. Do you seriously think All for One didn't figure out you had a time limit? All Might looks like the entire world just got shattered. So much so that Izuku would feel bad if it were anyone else, anyway. As it is, it's All Might, so Izuku just fully rolls his eyes this time. I already told you guys, my dad is actively trying to convince me over to his side. I wouldn't be surprised if he's taken the tactic of making the hero suspicious of me, so that I'll hate you guys and come running back to him because I have nowhere else to go. There are mixed reactions to Izuku's explanation, and Izuku knows it's going to be a long night. A likely story, All Might intones, although his tone isn't as impressive without his bulk to back it up. That makes sense, Eraserhead says, not moving from the firm stance he's taken behind Izuku's chair. Present Mic, touchingly, hasn't left his side either, literally, and with the two of them backing him up, Izuku is almost left feeling like he has loving parents. Almost. The sound of teeth grinding together is not enough to be impressive, and Izuku spares a brief moment to ponder the possibility of All Might cracking his own teeth. Your tricks do not fool me. Rolling his eyes so hard it almost jolts his head, Izuku sighs overly loudly. For the last time, there are literally no tricks. All Might, no one is trying to fool you. I'm not here to kill anyone or spy on UA or whatever other idea you've gotten into your head. There is a moment of silence where the room sits, stuck in stagnation. Villains do not become heroes, All Might finally intones, and Izuku can see that he just isn't saying the words, but that he truly believes what he's saying, that he simply can't comprehend anything else. And it makes him mad, makes him angry, because all Izuku has ever wanted was to be a hero. All he's ever wanted was to be something other than the thing he was created for, to save lives instead of end them. Who is All Might to call him a liar, to tell him he cannot? Izuku stares down in his lap, his hands clenched in fists without conscious thought. Rage beats with his heart, and it starts to cloud his thoughts. How dare All Might say that to him? How dare a man who can barely stand on his own try and tell Izuku what he's capable of? You know, All Might, Izuku says easily, casually, almost happily. I'm curious about something. And there's something off with the way he talks. Something wrong with his tone, and it makes the people in the room glance at him with trepidation. How would you kill me? Izuku asks pleasantly, and the whole room makes various noises of shock. Would you Detroit smash my head into the ground? Izuku asks, his voice going high and mocking when he says the name of All Might's favorite move. Like you did my dad? The energy in the room grows sickly, like it's sucking the life out of everything that moves. All Might blanches, and for a moment he almost looks like a normal hero when he starts to sputter some sort of denial. No! Izuku interrupts with a grin too wide for his face. I'm everyone's son, remember? I'm the bad guy. I'm everything wrong with this world. A hysterical giggle leaves Izuku's mouth, and the adults in the room grow more and more disturbed. You'd have to kill me, you know. I could steal everyone's quirk in this room in mere seconds. Izuku's teeth gleam like pearls that have been sharpened into daggers, and his voice is high and joyful. Fuck my dreams, fuck my aspirations, fuck everything I've tried so hard to be. I've got to be stopped. The grin melts off his face and the tone drops. So, how would you kill me? Complete silence suffocates the room, and it's like the silence creates a physical barrier between Izuku and the others, something impossible to bypass. He refuses to look away from the conflicting expression on All Might's face. You've made it clear there's no other option for me, Izuku continues to press, refusing to let up. And if I'm a villain, you'll have to fight me. If you were willing to kill all for one, you should be willing to kill me. We've got the same quirk after all. Who's to say I won't grow up and become just like him, right? All Might is no longer looking at Izuku, but Izuku's eyes are burning into the side of All Might's head. I'm waiting, All Might. Another moment of silence, where several open their mouths to step in, but like Izuku can sense it, he says, Don't pussy out now. You had a lot of shit to say to me a second ago. Tell me how you kill me. Say it. Eraserhead's hand grips onto Izuku's shoulder. Whether to reel him in or ground him, Izuku doesn't know. Blood leaks out of All Might's mouth as he stares at the ground, his hands curled into loose fists. Izuku pauses and takes a deep breath. There are a million hurtful things he can think of to say in the moment. A million things that either enrage All Might or tear him apart. Things about Nana, things about Tomura, things about his father. But Izuku wants to be a hero, so he doesn't. Instead, he says in a voice that's gone deceptively soft, Don't worry, All Might. You'll never have to make that decision. I won't let you. Tired and broken blue eyes look up and meet Izuku's, and a vicious anger rears up in Izuku as he bites. I'll kill myself before I let myself die by your filthy fucking hands. Several exclamations of noise from various people erupt, but Izuku's eyes don't move from All Might, who doesn't say a word and just stares. At the same time, the door opens and Detective Tsukauchi finally arrives. Right in the middle of the commotion, a startled look on his face. What's going on? He asks, and is completely ignored. After a moment, Recovery Girl grabs All Might and pulls him out of the office, presumably to the infirmary. Tsukauchi watches them go, then turns back to the room, eyes immediately falling on the spot in the room that is radiating rage. And of course, at its apex, stands Izuku. Tsukauchi sighs to himself. He has the unfortunate feeling that he and this kid are going to get remarkably familiar with each other very quickly. Nezu spots him first. Detective, he says brightly, immediately drawing everyone's eyes to him. I hope now is a good time, Tsukauchi says diplomatically, mostly for a lack of anything else to say. Of course, Nezu says, and it does nothing to dispel the tense atmosphere. All right, Tsukauchi says, walking over to Izuku. Shigaraki-kun, I'm going to interview you about the invasion of the USJ. Izuku says nothing, and he just watches Tsukauchi with cold green eyes as the detective sits down, pulling out the same disc recorder he'd used the first time they met. After he presses start on the recorder and says the introductory words, Tsukauchi finally looks at Izuku. All right, Shigaraki-kun, can you please recount how the USJ invasion happened from your perspective? This is so fucking tedious. I saw one of Kurogiri's portals open in the plaza, and I immediately alerted Eraserhead, and confirmed his hypothesis that it was my brother and caregiver. Izuku massaged one of his thumbs with his other hand. Call me, he wants to go to sleep. Then I went down there immediately to talk to Tomura. And what did you talk about? Tsukauchi asks, and it makes a wave of visceral rage wash over Izuku that's so strong he's taken almost by surprise. Does everyone really have to be present for this? He says, gesturing to the peanut gallery in the office. Nezu hums. Is there a problem, Shigaraki-kun? The willpower it takes for Izuku not to flip his lid then and there could power a generator. Yeah, actually, I don't want or need anyone but the detective to know what my brother spoke to me about. It was private, and I highly resent being made to share personal details about my life, more than I already have with you people. There are very few people in this office, Nezu points out, peering at Izuku with eyes that Izuku can't read. And I assure you that nothing said here will leave this office. His teeth grind against each other. That isn't my point. Nezu doesn't even bother to respond, and Izuku nearly shakes with anger, because he knows what Nezu wants him to admit, and he knows that Nezu would probably send out the others if he did too. If he admitted that he doesn't want to feel vulnerable, doesn't want to feel pitied, anything along those lines, any of those weaknesses laid bare would serve just fine as a sacrifice. His jaw sets. Nezu could go fuck himself, because Izuku doesn't bend to anyone. Tomura told me he sent out no-kill orders to the invaders. Izuku abruptly says, not looking away from Nezu. And he said he sent them over to Kalamai because father wouldn't have let him come otherwise. The actual reason, Izuku continues before anyone can ask, that he showed up at all was because he missed me, evidently. I offered to help him, Izuku growls, because it will always be easier to be angry than it is to be sad. And he said there's no way to help him. He said he would never blame me for anything, even for... And it's not that Izuku gets choked up, really. It's just that he doesn't want to have to be the one to say the word out loud. Even for leaving him. Izuku finishes, his voice lowering back down but growing no less strong. His fists are clenched so tightly he can barely feel his fingers. That is what we talked about. Thank you, Tsukauchi says after a pause. Then, Izuku pushes through because he's so fucking done with it all. I fought him with my knives as he tried to disintegrate me until All Might eventually managed to show up, which is when he and Kurogiri teleported away. You're just a kid, Tsukauchi can't seem to stop himself from saying, paling when Izuku says he fought Tomura, and the notion is so absurd that Izuku chuckles to himself. And there's something about the way he does, something that's borderline horrifying about the action. Maybe it's the way he genuinely seems to think it's funny, as if such a statement could only be a joke. Or it could be how out of place the laugh sounds coming out of such a dreary kid's mouth. Regardless, Izuku laughs, and the room quiets, filled with unease. Oh, detective, I haven't been a kid in a long, long time. It's after Izuku says this that someone makes a mistake. Someone who thinks they have all the clues to the crossword and they haven't even figured out they're supposed to be putting together a puzzle. Listen, Shigaraki-kun, I know you've had it rough, but you're young and the heroes understand the tough circumstances you were in. 13 says, speaking up for the first time. Shut up! Izuku suddenly cuts in, voice low and dangerous. Just shut the fuck up. Shocked faces cover the room, but there's tenseness uncutting all of them. Every one of them suddenly remembering fragilely that this kid was raised by the most powerful, terrifying villain of the quirk century. My pain doesn't matter, Izuku snarls more than he says. And neither does any of yours, quite frankly. Pain is a distraction and an excuse. It has nothing to do with who or what I am, because you know what? A sick sort of sadness creeps into the atmosphere of the room. My life has fucking sucked. I've been beaten down in every sense of the word, and I've seen things that will haunt me for the rest of my fucking life. I have had to do things I will never stop dreaming about. There's an emotion on almost every face in the room, something like horror and regret and agony that all come together to make a terrorized facial expression. But Izuku was not done. I have had to walk away knowing that I was saving myself but leaving him behind. Izuku stopped abruptly, inhaling deeply, pulling himself back together. He blinked, and the pieces that had begun to come undone were back together. But it doesn't matter. Izuku stares all of them down, eyes cold and empty. Someone else out there has had it worse than me, and another person had it worse than they did. Trauma doesn't make you special. It never has, and it never will. And when everyone in the room looks back at Izuku, they see a boy much older than them all. Save your excuses for someone who wants them, Izuku says, and it isn't even angry anymore, just tired. I am not so pathetic that I need to be exonerated of my actions just so that I can lie to myself and everyone around me. Was that all you needed, detective? Izuku spits acidly as he turns to the detective. Yeah, that was all. Tsukauchi starts filming with the recorder as Izuku turns to Nezu. So may I go home now, Principal? Izuku asks, his voice so sweet it makes everyone in the room flinch, jingling the quirk cuffs that are still on his wrists. Nezu is unfazed. Yes, thank you, Shirahiko-kun. He holds out a key, and although Izuku wants nothing more than to snatch the key from his paws and unlock the cuffs himself, he has more common sense than that. So he merely breathes as he holds his arms out, waiting for the principal to unlock one cuff at a time. Aizawa is waiting by the door, and Izuku nearly feels grateful for the man, as he surges past without saying another word to anyone in the office.